of you. It is about time for us to go ahead and get started because we don't want to miss anything that Dr. Drake is going to share with us. So let me just tell you just a little bit about, I hope you all know you're in the right place. You're at Coach Transformation Academy, Transformational Tuesdays. My name is Brenda. I'll be your host today. I'm one of the coach trainers here at Coach Transformation Academy. And again, I'm very happy that each of you are here. So let me tell you just a little bit about our awesome speaker today. Dr. David Drake is the founder and CEO of the Moment Institute in Portland, Oregon. He just shared with me, he just recently moved back to Portland. So the Moment Institute, they're global leaders in the transformative development of practitioners and how to address the issues of our time. Now, he's been working in the coaching space since 1996, and he's most known for as being the founder of narrative coaching. He's taught this modality to over 20,000 practitioners in over 40 countries. He started the Moment Institute to extend the legacy of narrative coaching and to teach integrative development, his groundbreaking approach to learning and development. Now, he's used this work to design every project, program, and presentation for the past 20 years. David is also a thought leader for the Institute of Coaching at Harvard. He earned his Ph.D. in Human and Organizational Development from Fielding Graduate University in California. And he is the author of over 60 publications and also the author of Narrative Coaching, the Definitive Guide to Bringing New Stories to Life, which moves us into our topic for today, which is the future of coaching, 3 new stories the world needs from us. I am so excited to hear about these stories. So over to you, David, and thank you so much for being with us.
Well, you're most welcome, and it's good to be with you all and to share what we're offering to all of you in your community. As I think about these kind of conversations and presentations, more and more I'm interested in trying to figure out how to simplify what we're trying to do as coaches, to begin to really streamline not only our own development, but how we think about our work with clients. And one of the ways I've found over the years that's been really effective that way is around stories. So I'll be sort of peppering our session today with a few anecdotes from my own experience, just to kind of illustrate some of the key points. And the primary purpose for this, for me, is really to offer you sort of an inspiration as you begin to look around on the near horizon about where coaching is going, where the world is going, and my invitation into 3 questions that might, again, inspire us to think about how might I need to evolve my view of coaching in order to meet the needs that the world is asking of us. And so for me, it's really a lot about developing ourself, which is one of the areas that we focus most on. So I've just got I've got 3 main stories. We've got about 3 slides for each one. And then there's going to be an opportunity for you to have some conversations with each other, see what this stimulates in you. And then we'll have a chance for any questions or reflections you have, just as a way for us to kind of be in dialogue with each other. So just as a bit of context, I'm just going to give you a couple of slides. They're just for you to enjoy and read, and they'll set the stage for our first invitation. So I'll let you read this in silence. Right. So 2 main things stand out for me in this. One is that in our work, we're moving to kind of both ends of the spectrum in that we're providing more development for our practitioners for themselves around their own sort of psycho-spiritual development and whatever that looks like for them, so they can actually hold more space for their clients around deeper issues and sort of sense of being both humbler and bolder. Because the other end of the spectrum is actually reimagining coaching to begin to take it less as what we do when people come to us, but how do we take coaching to where they are to begin to address some of the more systemic issues that we all face wherever we live in the world. And so for me, the distinction that captured the best is being grounded in ourself and at the same time visionary for what's possible. And the second most significant piece here on this slide for me is that coaching by itself is no longer enough, in my view. It needs to be actually allied with other things that we're doing with our clients, in large part because we can't no longer afford to have us sending our changed clients back into unchanged environments. And so we're looking at how do we bring coaching and the environment together to help people sustain what they actually start from us. And as we sort of find our way in and through and around and beyond the pandemic that we're all facing at this moment in time, it's obviously reshaping and the workplace, the use of buildings, the use of space, community, relationships, et cetera. And so I've often been really inspired by this next quote, which for me sort of captures where I see the future of business, but also the future of communities and countries, and therefore an invitation to begin to think about what that means for coaching. So one of the sort of pieces of life that I draw on for inspiration in this space is the ability of jazz musicians, and in your countries, you may have other versions of music whereby people come together and they improvise music together. And the beauty of what they play or perform is actually quite emergent in their spontaneous being together. And so for me, that just feels like it speaks really well to what we're being asked to do in business and in governments. And so there's three parts of this I want to focus on just really quickly about what that means for coaching. So the idea of nimble pods. We're used to coaching things that are intact, that kind of stay the same. But as society changes, as technology changes, we're being asked to work with a lot more emergent groups of people who might be coming together for a project or a particular initiative or something that they're working on. And so how do we coach into that kind of a space? How do we coach around commitment? Rather than goals or individual goals, it's about what are these people actually caring about? What are they trying to achieve? What's most important to them? How do we engage them and support them as coaches to follow through on their commitment? And then lastly, again, one of the things that I think is somewhat unfortunate about coaching is that sometimes it focuses so much on individual psychology. And what we know now from the literature and the research would suggest that a lot of who we think we are and how we behave and how we identify ourselves has much more to do with the collective, which will be, it's obviously a bigger journey for those of us in countries like the US where I live, which tend to be a very individualistic country. But even in other parts of the world, we're finding that beginning to think about coaching in relationship, both the coaching relationship itself, more than the methodology, but also the relationships in which our clients exist as a context for which we're working with them. And the last sort of contextual piece here, and then I'm gonna just share a couple of slides for our first invitation. So I'll let you enjoy this for a minute. So the part that stands out for me that I want to offer to you as a possibility is that that I think we often think of coaching as sort of the end all be all, but I think actually coaching is just the foundation for what's coming next. So one of our ways of exploring that is we're developing a community of practitioners all over the world who are basically working in the space we call integrative development. And I love this sort of framing of secular ministers of the soul. That just sort of in a way captures a lot of what we're trying to do, and just can provide a really provocative and really interesting exploration about if we were not limited by the word coach and we were free to work with what would serve our client at the highest level in any moment in our work with them, what would that enable us to do? And or but then how would coaching need to expand to be able to address things that we might not traditionally think of as coaching, as people are trying to find their way through this very difficult time. So the first just invitation for you is this one. So coaches are often, in my experience, very enamored with tools, and we have plenty of them ourselves. And I've found over the years that while some of that can be very helpful, particularly when you're learning coaching, that really what our clients most appreciate from us is the human connection we make with them. And that requires us to be able to show up with what we would think of as our soul or our spirit or the core of our being as another human. And sometimes we hide behind our tools as opposed to just being there with our clients as they're trying to have conversations that are important to them. And so one of the roles that we play with them that's so important, which I think is significantly underrated in coaching, is our ability to see them, to hear them, to be with them. And I often tell our students that, our clients will have forgotten, frankly, the vast majority of our coaching session within days after it occurs. But what they won't forget for then or often for a long time is how it felt to be with us at critical moments in the conversation. Our belief in them, our witnessing of them, our support for them. And so I was just struck by this quote as a way to begin to express that. And then pretty soon we'll give you an invitation to talk to each other. So I'll let you just read this. And so I would imagine that many of you will have some scenes similar to this. You'll have different religious symbols, different traditions around mourning and honoring those who have passed. But for me, the whole notion of imagining that we're witnessing another human on a journey of change fundamentally altered how I thought of myself as a coach. I used to think that as a coach, my job was to do stuff, to lead clients along a process or to get them somewhere down the road. And now I just find that what we're doing really is we're witnessing this person who's trying to unfold in a way or grow in a certain way or achieve something new for themselves. And a lot of our best gift to them is actually just to witness them in their attempts to do so, to help pay attention, to help them notice in new ways how they're showing up in their conversation. And so what that means, though, is we have to let go of our image of ourselves as this poor woman on the left. And oftentimes we load up our stuff. I've got to carry all these things into my session. I have to know all these things and do all these things. And I just find that to some degree that's helpful, but I'd rather be the person on the right. A lot of what we're doing actually is we're having to work in a more agile manner. We're having to deal with more complex issues with our clients. And we can't be carting in these giant boulders to our sessions. We actually have to be able to be free to ride alongside our clients as they're trying to navigate what they're going through. And so I'll just give you one more piece on this, and then I'm going to just invite you to join in a shared inquiry together. Yeah. So the biggest message I guess I would offer for you here is that rather than trying to keep up with all the this year's colors of what to paint your horses, what if we were to set our horses free from the carousel and going round and around? And so often in coaching, we take what we're given from our client or from the sponsor of our client, and beginning to imagine in our work anyways, in our community, what it would be like to take coaching to people. So how would coaching reshape classrooms, um, families, neighborhoods, taking all the wonderful things that we know about how to transform and develop people, and getting out ahead of the game rather than just dealing with what comes at us, which is often the results of systems that are not working. And so rather than just sort of continuing to mend and do what we think in medical terms as triage, how do we actually get out in front of that to help people not be wounded or in need so often from the beginning? And so part of that then is for us to tap into what is our soul longing for? Like, what is it in our heart of hearts or in our mind or our soul, whatever language works for you, inspired you to become a coach in the first place? What is it you really long to be able to bring more to the world based on who you are and what you know? So I'm going to give you just 10 minutes in some breakout rooms, just to give a chance for you to share a bit with your colleagues that you end up with in that room and see how you might answer this question for yourself. All right. So I'm going to turn this over to our wonderful hosts to make that happen.
For those of you that are having trouble going into the breakout rooms, you should see something on your screen that says join. Just hit join and it will take you directly to the room that you've been assigned. Thank you so much.
So just before we move on to the next piece, just wanted to see if anyone wanted to put some reflections or questions in the chat box, or would even like maybe to speak, to share something before we move on. We could take a few of those. So friend, I'll let you see if track anything comes up in the chat box, and otherwise you can just signal to us if you want to ask
Things are
anything.
coming back in now.
Okay.
I'm looking now. I'm just checking some of the breakout rooms. They're still in the room.
Okay.
Let's see how much time is left on that. They must be having very deep conversations now.
Yeah.
Logging for inner peace. Be a responsible person to the society. Beautiful. Beautiful. So, if you just want to go ahead and close out those breakout rooms, we can go ahead and move forward. Very good. I see the message now.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's actually nice to have a moment of peace and quiet on these calls. We get talked at all day long on Zoom these days.
Exactly.
All right, Chef, I'd let you just let me know when everybody's back in, and we can go and get started again.
I think they're all bouncing in now because we just closed out the room.
Whether they were done or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're all back now. So you might want to ask your question again as far as
So we just have a couple of minutes, but I wanted to see if there, just give you a minute if you want to put something in the chat box, as some of you have already done, about how you answered your question, this question for yourself. And if anybody wants to speak to that briefly, we can make that possible as well. Otherwise, we'll just enjoy the chat box. Oh, somebody put their hand up, I see.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find them. There we go. Okay, so Ashrita, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Go ahead and share.
So my name is a tongue twister. I'm sorry, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
So my name is a tongue twister, and please feel free to call me Ash. So
I like that.
yeah, much easier, right? So my sole mission is to work with young adults. I work extensively with 16 to 24-year-old young adults. I call them young adults. And I've been working with them extensively for the past 3 years now. So I don't know my soul mission, but what is my soul longing for? My soul definitely is longing for more support, um, more encouragement. I face a lot of difficulties because I don't have children of my own, so I do get a lot of backlash when I work with young adults. I get backlash from their parents that how would you know about a young adult? I mean, you're not a mother. And my answer is, I speak their language, which perhaps you don't. Um, and that's how I get across to them. But yes, in the last year, like I shared with in the group, in the last year, I come from Gurgaon, which is in India. I have seen a lot of young adults committing suicide. The pandemic has really taken its toll on them. And yes, my soul is definitely longing for support. So yes, maybe I'm not sending the signal out to the universe correctly, and I need to change the frequency and vibrate better. And I am sure the universe will send me support.
Mm. Mm. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's
So we also have Eddie for a birthday
Okay.
share. Thank you, Eddie.
Yeah. This question, in fact, I enjoyed my room. I shared a room with a wonderful young lady there and another brilliant brother. One thing I have understood about the question, what your soul longs for, or what is your soul longing for? And for me, I know that the moment we delve into this level of discussion, then we will be talking a little more about the spiritual. You know, I desire that my dealings with people, each time I leave my house, go to work, or meet people, I get so much satisfaction returning home knowing that my life made a difference in another person's life, you know. And for me, I have discovered that is what my soul longs for every day because as as my life makes a difference in another person's life, it comes back to me again with some degree of fulfillment that truly I am living the purpose of my existence. Let me not take your time, but that's exactly how I feel. And thank you.
okay. All right. Well, thank you. Well, that's great, articulate expressions of your yearnings for your work, and so thank you. So I'd like to move to our second piece here, our second invitation, and it's something that again I've noticed having taught coaches for a long time. That sometimes we get kind of enamored with our own methods. And which is great. We should become really good at what we do. So we each have our own ways of doing coaching, but I just want to offer you again, as a bit of a provocative invitation to begin to imagine a different point of focus. And again, particularly if we're looking at how coaching might evolve over time and maybe moving away from our formats we have now. And to the last gentleman that was speaking, I feel like I do more coaching often informally than formally by virtue of how I live my life, how I interact with people. And so it's these next couple of slides have been really empowering for me, and I'm hoping they'll be the same for you. So I'll let you see this for a minute. So Natalie Goldberg is a longtime Buddhist, but also is most well known as a author of books about writing. So she originally said this about writing, but I thought it applied equally well to coaching. And so the biggest invitation that I see in this comment here is that when we focus too much on ourselves when we're working, which happens to all of us sometimes, myself included, we feel like we are our coaching, and the coaching is the point of this conversation. And when I stopped thinking so much about my coaching and paid more attention to, as you move through a conversation with a client, you encounter all kinds of things, emotions and thoughts and actions and questions. And so I started to realize that I couldn't just stay in one way in a client conversation, and to be the coach might take on many different forms depending on what the person and their story and the moment is asking of us. So if we're just sort of sitting back really casually, for example, and thinking that we're listening, and a client is trying to tell something that's very painful or difficult or emotional for them, they're not going to feel very much rapport with us. They're not going to feel witnessed by us. And so we might have to lean in a bit more. We might have to show a bit more empathy. And so I found that for me, the easiest way to do that was to realize that I was just sort of a channel, if you will, or I was a vessel for things to happen that are trying to unfold in that conversation. And what it did was just changed my point of focus from myself to what was in front of me. And I found that that's made it not only much more powerful in working with my clients, but also, frankly, much easier in the sense that I'm not efforting so much. I'm not working so hard to have to carry the conversation or make something happen. There's something that's trying to emerge in that moment. Maybe a client's revealing something or telling a part of a story they've never told before, or coming to grips with something that's true for them. And I'm trying to then, how do I'm sometimes even get out of the way, but make that moment happen. And so one of the ways that we've been exploring that more and more in our work is realizing that one of the things that coaching doesn't pay enough attention to is our bodies. And our bodies actually are, both as a coach and as a client, are so central to both how we work and then for our clients, how they can sustain. And so these next two slides are about our body, and then I'm going to give you a chance to talk to each other. So the analogy for me in this for coaches is that, again, if we're caught up in taking steps and going from A to B to C to D, we're going to miss a lot of what's happening. And so oftentimes clients say things that catch us off guard or put us off balance. And so if we imagine ourselves as a dancer, not that we literally could do this, although it's quite envious that he can do this, but that our center of gravity, our grounding as a coach, travels with us. And so that we're already, as we move into a moment of time with our client or move into a part of their coaching process with them, we take our balance with us. So that no matter what happens, we're not acting to make something happen so that we can know what's coming next. We're actually moving into this in a grounded way that allows us to be present to whatever is actually showing up for our client. And, and so the first story we had earlier about, how to deal with parents who were criticizing this woman for not being a parent herself, overlooking the fact that she's obviously trained and committed to working with these young people. And so she's able to take her center of gravity into that conversation to have those challenges and kind of move through them. And so part of it is not having to plan out our session or ask things to control what comes next. It's actually just being willing to show up to see what's going to happen and allowing ourselves to be there. And one of the best ways we can do that is to use our own body. And so when I'm working, I'm always sort of trying to sense what's actually happening right now. And so much of what actually transforms a client is not in their head, it's in their body. And a lot of what the truth of their own stories is not in their head, because our ego often deceives us a bit. It's more in their bodies. And so I'm going to use my body and all of the things it's very good at in sensing what's happening And a lot of what then, where growth actually happens for our clients, comes in places in the other person that are somatic, not cognitive. The brain sort of comes later to bring language to what the body already knows. And so what I'm going to ask you to do, again, we'll give you, let's just be a little bit different, and this give you 8 minutes this time in groups of 3 again. So I'll give our host a chance to change 10 to 8. And I'm just really curious for you, as you imagine working like this with your clients and the coaching work that you do, what is the moment, if you would imagine working in that moment, what does that bring up for you? And what questions do you have about that? And even in this moment right now, like we're about to take a break. So what is this moment asking of you? Maybe it's about being more forthcoming in the breakout room. Maybe it's being a better listener. Maybe it's dealing with the emotions that this might stir up for you. So you can use this literal moment as you move into the breakout rooms to sense into what it might be like to work like this for your clients. So I'm going to turn it back over to our wonderful hosts and invite you into some conversations with each other. So hopefully you should see a magic button on your screen very soon. And then you can click and go have your conversation. So if you just want to take a minute and put any of your reflections in the chat box, that would be wonderful, about what came up for you and your group. And maybe we can take one person who would like to share that out loud. So take the first person that raised their hand.
All right, that would be Nayan Kumar. Please go ahead and share.
Yeah. So, what this moment asking of you in, it was a deep reflections based on the session that we are having right now. The second invitation was serve the moment, not the methods. And then I started reflecting my coaching kind of practice and what Nayan is doing in the practice. So I think it's a long way for me. It's a long way to go in terms of moving from methods to moments. So being present in the moment. So that's a big reflections for me and a big learning from this session. And because I'm more systematic, more structured in the coaching, and probably so I'm not really going deep into this conversation with the clients. So This is my big reflections. Yeah. So, and another point that I'm using sometimes, and my mentor coach has helped me to build that skill, is about since becoming aware of my bodily sensation and observing the client's body language and the clue that you are getting. If something that some nudge or some kind of sensation you have in your body, and it is something telling you, that intuition, you can share with your client without being right, and ask their permission whether it is true or not. So this is something I was reflecting in this moment.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and so perhaps like you, have had the occasion to be around really good athletes, and they often share that they often get hurt when they leave their body and get up into their mind, thinking about the break or the score or whatever. And learning the basics of any craft like coaching is all about methods. That's the way we find our way into our practice. And then it's the beginning to focus more on the moment when we have more confidence in what we're doing and more trust in ourselves. So enjoying reading the comments, and I'd like to move on to our last invitation for you, just for you to continue to think about how some of this might relate to your own practice. So one of the beliefs and one of our observations in narrative coaching is that clients are choosing how to tell their story with us in the context of the coaching session. The stories don't live in our head like in a filing cabinet. They're formed every time they're told. And so we're really curious about what parts make it into the person's story and what parts don't. And one of our advocacies, or what we're supporting in the coaching conversation, is what is the story trying to get us to pay attention to? It's often the things that are sort of sneaking into the story, or maybe muttered under the person's breath, or things that give us clues that the story would like us actually to look here. And so one of the ways we think about that, about why that's so important, I won't dwell on this next slide too much, but the kinds of things that some of you have already spoken to, that our clients are bringing to us, require a much more sophisticated way of thinking about our practice, not just focusing on the presenting issue, but kind of seeing that in the broader context. And so this is one of the ways that we sort of think about that, is in terms of traditionally, we often think about a very linear, like a client shows up, they tell us their story, we figure out what the problem is, and then we help them try to find a solution. Now, there's some times where that's all they need. But more and more, we're finding that our clients need a lot more from us. And so the field of integrative development brings a very different perspective, which recognizes that all of these 4 elements exist at the same time, including the solution. And that at any point in time, not only are we sort of noticing all 4 of these in the field, in that space between us and the conversation, but the context for this person's story is also present. So how does their gender play into this? How does their status in an organization play into this? How does their life situation play into this? And so it means that we can focus on any of these elements at any point in time in the conversation, and to recognize that what's going to actually help a client find his or her way to resolve whatever's in front of them might come from any of these spaces. And it's not, and so often where a client begins is nowhere near where they end up at the end of coaching. And part of why I stopped setting goals with my clients was that it was very rare for a client to show up and really know what they really wanted from coaching. And most of what they really wanted showed up as we actually unpacked their story and began to hold in a new way what's possible. And so what that means for me, and I've actually been to a place that looks just like this. I was actually hunting for this particular object, but I never found it. But in Hawaii, when I went to visit once, they have a lot of these lava fields like this where life is trying to come back. And so for me, if I look at this, I think we might set a goal for this emerging plant to grow. Well, and we could support them, and they'd work really hard, and eventually over many generations of plants, they might reclaim the lava field and make it fertile for plants again. Or we could say to the client, are you aware that you're actually trying to grow on a lava field? Wouldn't it be more advantageous for you to actually be in a place that actually would be more hospitable to you? And yeah, thank you, Lynn, for putting that in the chat box. And so I just had this whole notion of, rather than worrying so much about goals, what if we spent more of our time helping clients create better soils, better contexts that are healthier for them, more sustainable for them. And so going back to the presenting story from the very beginning about working with the issue around teen suicide, which we have is rampant here in the States as well. It's not just about addressing each young person one at a time. It's trying to understand what are the conditions that kids are facing that's leading them to make some of these choices. And so for me, that's where I think coaching is evolving. And I think the future of coaching is not just around supporting individuals to grow. It's about creating soils that make it easier for more people to grow. And I'm really curious where that will take us with coaching. So I understand we have a few more minutes we can take. I'd like to give you 5 minutes to sort of explore our last question, and just to see kind of for you in your own situation, for your own coaching practice, kind of what's come up for you in all this. Has this been inspiring for you, provoking for you, confusing to you, I suppose? But kind of what are you taking from this? This idea of looking at the soil in which our clients are trying to grow. How does it land for you to be able to work like this? I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll bring our session to a close. Okay? All right. So just again, share highlights, and then we'll see you in about 5 minutes. Oops. Let me know when everybody's back.
I think, let me just check. So Hummus, are all the breakout rooms closed? All right, he says yes. So I think we're all back.
All right, so I'm gonna I'll take off the slides in just a minute so we all can see each other, but this is where you can find us if you'd like to know more about what we do. And I'm just really curious again, just to invite you to share any thoughts you have in the chat box. And maybe we'll take a couple of final remarks once we go off the slides here. But for now, just we'll be happy to read anything you have to offer in the chat box. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing here, and that way we can all see each other. Hopefully that worked. Yes. There we go. All right. So we'd just love somebody, maybe one or two people would like to share briefly anything that came up for them in their last conversation. And also, again, you're welcome to write in the chat box. It was like Edie or Eddie. Which way do you pronounce your name?
Eddie.
Eddie, okay.
All right. I had a very wonderful time with a friend somewhere in first at room 12 and then room 7. But the fact is, the statement about coaching in the future got me straight. That coaching will, in the future, roll away from goal setting, maybe the very conventional approach, into helping the client till the soil. And to me, that ended the discussion. Because if that happens, I have had instances where you share with a person and you listening to somebody pour out is one very beautiful part of this this vocation. You know, people talk out, and at the end of the talking, they actually feel that they truly emptied themselves. And for you who is listening, you're just picking the pieces, even the suggestions or the tilling of the soil that you're going to do with him is actually coming from all that he has said. And too many times in the talking, solutions are already coming in between. So when you help connect the dots, it's like, wow, I never thought about it this way. But actually, the whole process came from him.
Yes. Yes.
The whole solution came from him. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you. All right, anybody else want to share before we close for the day? Oh, Sophia, I think you wanted to speak before as well, so now's your time.
Sophia. Sophia, are you there?
Yeah.
There you go. Just unmute yourself. There you are. Go ahead.
She may be typing.
Sophia?
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
maybe we can.
I do agree with Eddie. Most of the time when I do the coaching with my clients, I come to find that most of what my client has poured out is more of giving me a clue to solve the problem. And the goals that I had in my list have been waved off for me just to concentrate on what the client has already delivered for me to work on it. And it has really helped me a lot. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, so I just want to thank you all for spending this time. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. Thanks to all the folks at CTA for inviting me. It's a part of the world I've not worked in a lot, so this has been really wonderful to hear more about what coaching means to you and how you're thinking about your coaching. And the world needs us now more than ever. So hopefully this has inspired you to think, how else could you bring your gift of coaching to the people that you care about and your part of the world? So I wish you all the very best for the rest of your day or evening, and be well.
And I'll just say thank you so much, David. This has been extremely informative. We have learned so much. And you can find in the chat how to access the recordings so that you can come back and hear this all again if you want to review it. And we look forward to seeing you all next week for Transformational Tuesday. So see you all next week. Thank you for staying over. Those of you that stayed over, we appreciate it. Thank you so much, David. And you all have a very pleasant evening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.